We're on page 386. We mentioned yesterday in Shulchan Aruch about who you're allowed to purchase a talit from. And we mentioned that when a Jew sells you a talit, you're allowed to purchase a talit from a Jew. And when a non-Jewish merchant tells you that the talit that they're selling you, they purchased from a Jew, you're also allowed to purchase the talit from them, because we assume that a business person, a salesperson, they don't want to ruin their business. Why would he lie to you? If he's going to lie to you that he got it from a not kosher source, then we're not going to be his repeat customers. And therefore, a non-Jew is reliable in the matters of tzitziot, because we assume that he wants to keep on to his business. This would not apply to some guy who's selling tzitziot out of his basement or the back of his car or something like that. We're talking here about a reputable dealer who sells such articles. Mutar mikar adin liknot talit mitzuyetzet misrael. Therefore, I'll recap. It's from the basic halakha, it's permitted to buy a talit from a Jew, afilu eino mikiro, even if you have no idea who he is. Ve'afilu eino tagar haosek tamid b'mchira, and even if he's not a person that has a store or a business, he's just a Jewish guy who sells tzitziot out of his basement. ואין לחוש שמא נעשהו הציציות הותרו בבגד שלא לשם מצוות ציצית. And you don't have to suspect that maybe the tzitziot are not kosher because they don't know who he is. מפני שיש להעמיד המוכר בחזקת כשרות. Because a person has a cheskat kashrut. What does a cheskat kashrut mean? Cheskat kashrut means I assume that a person who's Jewish who's selling me tzitziot, I'm allowed to assume that they're selling me a kosher tzitzit. Some would say the times have changed. And unfortunately people will do a lot of things for money. And money is the new god on the street. And people will sell whatever they want and for whoever they want and to whoever they want as long as they'll get money for it. I once was in a conversation with somebody who was a Jew for Jesus. It's fancy for a Jewish Christian, that's the bottom line. And there's a whole yishuv, a moshav of such people right outside of Yerushalayim. And so they sent me a documentary about their moshav. And the one question people want to know is, how do you get rabbis out here to do a brit milah for your children? Mm-hmm. And they said, you pay a guy enough money, he'll come wherever you want him to come. And to me, that's one of the saddest things I ever heard in my life. Because if we lack principles and values and integrity that you cannot buy us out with money, then we're in problems. We have today, there's a man in New York, Muncie actually, he's a Hasidic rabbi, who, there was a certain child predator, the predator of children, was in prison for a year and a half for 13 accounts of child abuse. A year and a half, you understand? You could cheat on your taxes and a person could be put in prison for 20 years. But 13 children, a year and a half.
What happened to Stanford?
He was let out after a year and a half. And a child came out just a little bit later and said, I was abused by this man. They called the police put out a warrant for his arrest, and this man fled the country. Fled to Israel.
Of course. The city of refuge.
Israel has become, unfortunately, in the last number of years, a refuge for sexual predators. Because of their extremely tough extradition laws. To extradite somebody from Israel is not so simple.
Like Jew.
Especially if they're Jewish and they're Israeli, they're claiming they're being persecuted because they're Jewish. They can make up a story, and it's unfortunate that that's the way the system has worked. And this man fled to Israel. And so this rabbi put out a notice to his Facebook feed, Twitter feed, whatever it was. Please, to my friends in Har Nof and Jerusalem, beware, there's a sexual predator on the loose. And some people called him, it's Lashon Hara, how can you speak Lashon Hara about this person? Lashon Hara is my job as a rabbi to tell people that they have to be afraid, to treat him like he's a terrorist holding a knife. The next morning, someone was waiting for him in his driveway in Muncie, New York, serves him with a lawsuit. 200,000 shekels, about $55,000, defamation of character, slander lawsuit.
He ran out of the country and yes.
A lawsuit, slander in Israeli court. It's what, the definition of slander, not according to halakha, according to legal codes, is to ruin a person's good name by telling lies about them.
Right.
If a person served in prison for such a crime, what good name are you ruining for them? mean, what am I going to say? He didn't pay his parking ticket. It pales in comparison to what he did do. They didn't make up anything about him. It's not a lie. This is true. He just mentioned this person is dangerous for your children. Please stay away. He was just offered a settlement this week. $400.
No,
Settle out of court, $400. He said he refuses to pay $400. Because you're not going to buy somebody for $400. So if a rabbi says that you can buy me for $400, then it's not worth it. So this is going to test case. He says he'll go to court, he'll pay the fine, he'll do whatever it takes. But he will not give it to this person. You have to have integrity. Especially in the month of Elul. We're talking about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You know who doesn't have integrity? Somebody who the whole year does one thing, they come Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, they pretend the other way, and they know that 10 minutes after Yom Kippur is over, they're going to go back to the way they were. That's also a lack of integrity. Not doing teshuvah is a lack of integrity. Here, we live in a world where I don't know that I can see a guy with a kippah and say, oh yeah, he has integrity. The man in the story who served the lawsuit, this guy with a kippah, don't think he's some guy from the street. He's a Jewish guy, a religious guy, so to speak. And therefore he says that many of the later rabbis have said that nowadays it's better to be strict and not buy a talit that has tzitzit on it, or tzitziot, or just tzitziot, mistam anashim, from people that you don't know. I promise you that these tzitzit were made by a rabbi who goes to the mikveh every day, 3 times a day. It doesn't make a difference. You don't know him, don't trust him. Unless, of course, you know that they're reliable people. It's a judgment of character. You can't make a halakha. These kind of people are reliable, those kind of people are not reliable. You have to know who you're dealing with. Just last year, there was a Kollel man in his 50s who bought tefillin about 30 years before and never checked them. He wore them. Tefillin, you don't have to check tefillin.
You don't?
Mezuzot, you have to check. Twice every 7 years. Every 3.5 years, you must check your mezuzot. Your tefillin, because you wear them every day, if someone doesn't wear the tefillin, it goes default. They have to check the tefillin. But if someone constantly wears their tefillin, according to the letter of the law, not what should be, but the letter of the law, they don't have to. So, ironically, because something is being used all the time, we assume that it's not sitting in some dry place or wet place or hot place that the letters are going to crack, but rather a person who wears tefillin every day is taking good care of them. You don't have to check his tefillin. A while had passed. This man decided he wanted to check his tefillin. I believe this story happened in Cholon in Israel. The sofer opens up his tefillin, which he bought 30 years before from a rabbi. I read this tefillin. I know the tzaddik who wrote them. And he opens them up, and inside was a piece of paper that says, you're a loser.
It's so sad.
It's a true story.
Oh my gosh.
True
30
story.
years the man was doubting for me.
Ata frayer.
Aye.
You're a loser. 30 years he was praying with his tefillin. You don't know. I'm sure if you ask Dan how many times you get photocopies of mezuzot. I have a collection. I keep them in my house.
Yeah.
A collection of all the not kosher mezuzot that I find. People bring me mezuzot and I'll tell you, these 4, they're not even kosher. I'm not even going to waste your money to send them into the sofer. Nobody laminates mezuzot. Yeah, nobody. It just doesn't work that way. If the mezuzah is upside down, nobody's selling you mezuzot upside down. If it says inside, I don't know, Shamayim, I don't know, whatever it says in there, these mezuzot are not kosher. Someone brought me here a mezuzah. It looked like it was written on somebody's leather jacket. It's like he cut a little piece out of his leather jacket and wrote a mezuzah in the back with his own handwriting. One of them looks like Al-Hanan wrote the mezuzah. It's incredible things that people and don't think that they found it for $3 and they went to some guy who's or better yet, some people they buy and they rely on somebody else and then they're the third party that sells it. You have to be careful to go somewhere where you can trust them. Or the other option is you can buy kosher talitot tzitziot sheyesh lahen teudat hashgacha mimoreh hora'ah muvak that has on it a symbol that says this was checked, but you have to know who the rabbi is. I know there was a reform rabbi here in California who used to give a hechsher on things. They sell them at Vons. I don't see them anymore. And on it was it looked like the Badat hechsher, like from the chief rabbi of Jerusalem. It was a flower, Hebrew letters. He called it himself HaKohen. They asked him, "You're not a Kohen?" Yeah, okay, I felt like it looked more official on my name to be HaKohen. You can't trust everything you see written in Hebrew. Some people just, for the fun of it, they do whatever they want. Hameid she'akol nasa k'alachat tachat hashgachato. You have to know everything was done under a certain person's hashgacha. V'kol sheken, how much more so? Im oto mocher chashud al kach shemocher talit mitzvah tishlom hatzikah lachad. How much more so if you walk into the store, you don't know the person, and you see, those are neon pink talitot with purple strings, and you have over here, this one says, I don't know, talitot for Jesus, whatever it says, souvenir from the lands of Israel, whatever it says over there, and he also has, over here I keep my kosher talitot. You want from the kosher talitot? This guy don't buy talitot. This is the kind of person you can't trust this person because clearly he sells whatever he wants for money. You have to be careful. We're not coming to judge someone who sells all kinds of things. We like to be tough on the people who sell Judaica. But you know how many Jews are supporting Judaica stores? They support Amazon. You know how many Christians support Judaica stores? You'll be surprised. You'll be surprised. As I can't judge a person like that, but unless you know the person behind the counter and you say, they would never sell me something not kosher, don't go buy from them. That's why it's very important. Very important. I tell only people make bar mitzvahs for $20,000, $30,000, I don't know, $50,000. I don't know how much people make bar mitzvahs. But the more money people spend on their bar mitzvahs, the more chances the kid is not going to have a Jewish wedding. Not a fact, but it almost seems to me that a bar mitzvah, for those of us who know, a bar mitzvah is a bar mitzvah. We have a dinner, we have a lunch, or whatever you have. But the people who throw a wedding for the bar mitzvahs because they're not sure if there's going to be a Jewish wedding. They're not sure. They're almost like this is the last Jewish thing we know for sure they might celebrate with us. It's very scary. That's the way it works here. They say it's more of a bar than it is a mitzvah. It's the kind of world.
What happens if you buy something? If you buy a mezuzah or you buy something from somebody that's not reputable, but you believe you're buying something that is reputable.
And then later you find out that it wasn't any good.
But the time that you've used it, isn't it reputable? Because I remember
there was a rabbi here who came to San Diego. A rabbi, not really a rabbi. A pastor, a life coach, I don't know, not a rabbi. He came here and he gave a speech and he said to people, you buy tefillin, whatever, it's not good. For 25 years, God's not going to counter for you that you wore tefillin. How do you know? You asked him? You have a memo from God in his email that he sent out today in the morning. הפוך, הקדוש ברוך הוא מצטרף מחשבה למעשה. We do count a person's intentions count for that. He was swindled. It wasn't his fault. It should have worked better in the beginning. But to tell me that Hashem's going to discredit everything they did, I don't have a God like that. My God doesn't work like that. It doesn't mean you don't have to be careful when you buy, but backwards, people don't have to feel regret, or maybe I didn't, or maybe like this guy for 30 years. I'm sure he was. There was once a person. There's an old Hasidic story of a man who made sure that his tefillin that he bought at his bar mitzvah were written by a famous Hasidic rabbi. And he traveled his whole life with these tefillin. And one day he came to a town when he was traveling through Turkey. I don't know what the story was. And he didn't have his pair of tefillin with him. They were lost, and then he found them later that day. But that morning, he borrowed tefillin from the local synagogue, and they were like almost crumbling at the pieces. They looked like a really old, crummy set of tefillin. And he put them on. And that night he had a dream. And in the dream, someone from the Bedin Shamana, from the heavenly court, came to him and said, all 50 years you've been wearing this tefillin, the Rebbe who wrote them made a mistake when he wrote them. Didn't mean to. He made a mistake. They weren't kosher. But the tefillin that you wore in the synagogue today was the first time in your life you ever put on a kosher pair of tefillin. Sometimes you look at something and you think maybe it's not so good. It's very, very important. Only buy these things from people that you can trust. And I'll tell you, if you're spending that much money on a bar mitzvah, don't try to skimp $30 on the pair of tefillin. What's the point of it? You spend $1 million buying a house, but you want photocopied mezuzot because the ones that cost $40 a mezuzah are too expensive for you. You just spent $1 million buying a house. You spend more money on your insurance you pay for the house every year and your property taxes than you'll spend on mezuzot in your whole life. But people lack priority sometimes. And you have to make sure that when you buy things, you buy them from people who are reputable, who you can trust their reputation. It's very important. I can't overstress this type of thing. It's Elul. The Jewish custom is the Matar Elul, to check your tefillin, check your mezuzot. You must. There's no choice. Just to make sure. If you're not, there are even people are afraid to check their mezuzot. You know why? They've been lying to them since they were born that mezuzot protects your home. And if you take them all off and check them, then maybe your home is not protected.
He's talking about
They were lied from when they were children. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about most of the people in this room. We don't do any mitzvot because they're lucky charms. None of them. We don't do any mitzvah that protects you. The mitzvot that we do are because HaKadosh Baruch Hu told me to do a mitzvah. If Hashem happens to protect me because I follow His Torah, great, but that's not why I put a mitzvah on the door. And therefore, if the only way to ensure that I'm doing the mitzvah correctly is to take them down and check them, that's part of doing the mitzvah. It's part of, just like you take off your tefillin because you have to put it on tomorrow. There's nothing wrong with taking off your tefillin today if you're going to put them back on tomorrow. Take off your mitzvot, you put them back on. Make a time period. Don't wait 6 months, 2 days, 3 days, a week, and how long it takes to check your mitzvot. And you'll come and nothing will happen to you between them. You don't have to be afraid. Judaism is the Elul. Judaism has to get away from its superstitious backgrounds. We picked up a lot of things in Galut. In our exile, the worst thing we ever did were adopt mentalities from the nations around us that are incorrect. And they've crept in. Sometimes I'm opening a book, I see some great rabbi says something. I'm very embarrassed to tell you the origin of what this great rabbi said is not from a Jewish source.